big takeaway from Buffett talking about tariffs and the potential for an all-out trade war?
I'd love to see Warren Buffett in the negotiation leadership position for the United States. I mean, he's a savvy, insightful guy who really takes the long term. And, he provides sage advice to investors this morning that as much as this is rattling the markets short term, if you're a long-term investor, there's no reason to be too concerned this morning.
Doug, what if you're a long-term investor in Berkshire Hathaway? Anything said over the weekend or this morning in the interview to change your thesis?
It's been a tough decade. They underperformed the S&P, but he's not going to change his socks. He's had a 40-year run. He's got a very strong bench. I mean, we got to see a little bit from a couple of those guys over the weekend. Greg Abel masterfully answered several questions, and people have a sense of him. Every time I talk to Greg, I sometimes think I'm talking to Warren. So I'm very bullish long-term on Berkshire, and I think the meeting this weekend ratified that sense. The meeting is really less about providing information than strengthening the culture of Berkshire Hathaway by repeating venerable practices and positions, and on that score, the meeting was a total success.
Doug Cohen, as a shareholder, do you agree?
Yeah, not quite. I would say, look, Berkshire Hathaway has outperformed the S&P 500 by something like 2.5 million% over the last 54 years. They have earned an enormous benefit of the doubt. That being said, they have underperformed for the last 5, 10, 15 years. And I think when you look at this weekend, of course, we got the folksy wisdom, some tremendous insights on business, all the things that they do so well, the same kind of things that they did with you for 3 hours this morning. I'll actually take a little bit of a different view than Lawrence in the sense that I think the challenge now becomes about the next generation. They've done this for 54 years. They're unfortunately not going to be around for the next 54. And I think part of what has caused the stock to struggle is that they haven't been very clear about a lot of different things. Corporate governance at Berkshire Hathaway is done very differently than most of modern corporate America. When you look at the nature of the board, the insider nature of the board, the lack of transparency on the individual companies, they give a lot of big picture details, not a lot of sort of precise details, and certainly succession. You don't hear a lot from Jane and Abel. There was a little bit at the meeting. They still won't put them up on the kind of the prime stage. It would have been great to see them this morning on your air. So I do think there are some possibilities, or at least some things they could do that will help the stock.
Yeah, 10, 15 years is not a short amount of time to underperform, Doug. And to your point, they look great, Munger and Buffett, but one's 95, the other's 88. Can you imagine, though, a Berkshire without either one of them at the helm?
It's going to be the reality at some point. And look, I think they've done a tremendous job creating a culture that has stood the test of time. And my hope is that they, sort of the ultimate best thing that they can do for their company and for their shareholders is to leave it in the best hands possible. But I will say, and this is not a revelation, if it were virtually any other company that has allocated capital, that has not really committed significantly to buybacks or a dividend, a lot of the things that are unique to Berkshire Hathaway, there would be activists lining up to enter the company right now. And it'll be a real test when Warren and Charlie are no longer there for that management team to have the same ability to withstand some of the pressures that are going to be placed on them.
Lawrence, to you on the final word. I know you've written a ton about this. And I would just say, to Doug's point, that issue was addressed. I think I read that in some of the notes of the meeting about whether his deputies would come on stage, and Buffett didn't rule it out. He said something you might see, and we've been planning for this for a long time.
Yeah,
Lawrence?
I mean, Greg is out there. I mean, he is now leading on the press releases, announcing successions. He appointed his own deputy from Berkshire, Nevada, to run See's Candy. They're calling a lot of the shots. They're no longer getting most of the email traffic internally, so they're already making big, significant internal changes. And to Doug's point about Berkshire's uniqueness, its governance being unusual, its structure being unusual, that's the strength. And they have built a solid culture there. Obviously, none of us know what will happen in 5 or 10 years, but they have made the strongest possible succession plan for the company that they've built. And so none of us can be sure, but there's a very strong case that the future is bright.